you're not alone. If you need someone to talk to today, please contact Crisis Services Canada by either calling them at 1-833-456-4566 all hours of the day, or you can text them at 45645 at 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern Time. Remember, you're not alone, and Crisis Services Canada is here to help. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Rise and Shine Manitoba. I'm your host, Graeme Forsyth. Rise and Shine Manitoba is brought to you by Fabricland, Winkler, Evolve Green, and AETI. Special thanks to them for sponsoring today's edition of the show. It's going to be a good one today. 4 guests will be joining the show. Starting off a bit differently, not starting with the Farm Report. We're going to be talking some basketball. Executive Director of Basketball Manitoba, Adam Wedlake, will be joining the show just to give us an update of what's been going on with basketball here in Manitoba. Then after that, we're going to have Lorena Mitchell, host of Evolution Greenworks here on the network and CEO and founder of Evolve Green, coming on to do a solar report. After that, we'll go with our main man, Harry, on the Farm Report, talk about what's been going on in agriculture since the last time that we talked last week. And then we'll be talking some hockey with Pilot-Mound Hockey Academy's goalie coach and marketing director, Gordie Tumilson. He's going to take us through what the past weekend of games was like for the Academy and what's coming up for them this weekend. And then we'll be ending off today's show with a big segment, a big lineup of things to talk about on Graeme's opinion. That's all coming up today on Manitoba Show, Rise and Shine Manitoba, here on ASTV Productions. Joining me now is Executive Director of Basketball Manitoba. It's been a while since he's joined the show, but joining me on this October 6th date on this Wednesday morning, it's Adam Wedlake. Adam, how have things been going with basketball in Manitoba since the last time that we talked?
Good morning, Graeme. Nice to see you and always nice to chat. Love talking basketball. So, yeah, it's every time we meet, I think the first time we started talking was late, maybe early summer, late spring, maybe, and it was still a little slow, a little sluggish. But it's every time we talk, maybe your good luck out there for us. We're getting a little better, a little more activity, more action. So I can never complain about that. So, but yeah, it's been a year like no other for sure, like everybody else, and we're nicely now starting to see more and more basketball stay active and not be this roller coaster ride we've been having for like everybody else has been having for a year and a half now. So always good to chat.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Always good to have you on, and it's good that good things seem to always be happening with Basketball Manitoba every time that you come on the show here, which is great. But just talk about the things like the activities that Basketball Manitoba has been seeing just in terms of leagues out there and just how the activities and leagues have been going so far this year.
Well, yeah, virtually every league is now back, not in full capacity. That's a common question we're asked: is our numbers down? And we were anticipating this for sure that they are, and not everybody's ready to come back. And there's still a couple of restrictions out there with the requirement for adults to be vaccinated in order to gain entrance to any sporting facility indoors in Manitoba, and that includes basketball gyms for us. So yeah, it's still it's different. It's not 100% back, but I would probably gauge that we're probably 75% back most sports are in that same boat, especially indoor ones. Outdoor ones don't have as many restrictions, mainly just on spectators. But that vaccination requirement is still a thing, and it still requires another layer of something that we got to deal with. So, but overall, more than happy to get things back and rolling. We've had just this last weekend. We had our very first games officially back. Our largest member association, Winnipeg Minor Basketball, and their Peg City Showcase, they called it, ran this past weekend with 6 courts going here at Sport Manitoba, where I am right now, and at Dakota Community Center Fieldhouse all weekend. So that was great to see actual real basketball back and not just training or practices or virtual. So I know there was lots of pent-up anticipation for that, and a lot of people are now much more happier and content that actually did really happen, and nothing got pulled out on us in the last second like it has been in the past. So yeah, it's been great, including even some of our first real referee clinics have just happened as well, which those have been all either shuttered or virtual for the last year. And probably the biggest thing that we did put out as an announcement this week is the return of our Super Coaches Clinic, which we do that annually every October, late October. We are keeping that virtual. It's a large event. We usually draw 350 to 400 people at one time. And so we're still not 100% at the point where we can do things with confidence that things will carry on. And so we did decide to keep that virtual. So we just did announce that just late last week with our clinic leads that are being announced every day. We've announced 3 of the 4 of them so far on our website. More than happy to get things back and running.
Yeah, and just great to know that basketball is back being played here in Manitoba, actually getting to see games like you said this past week. And yeah, it's great that there's the type of interest this year, even though it being at 75%, still a great number to see with everything we've been through here, right, with just the pandemic. But just talking about the games that were played, this past weekend, just speaking about how things ran, were things running pretty smoothly with just the restrictions that were put in place?
Overall, yes. There's still every venue still has their option to restrict or limit spectators. That's sort of the unknown. You don't really know how many people will show up. You could have nobody show up. You could have 1,000 people show up. You just don't know. And that's still a thing, I guess, that still needs to be understood and managed. Everybody, again, no matter what or who you are, whether you're a player, coach, official, volunteer, spectator, if you're over 18 or 18 or over, you've got to be able to provide that proof of vaccination status. So that is a thing, and that still has can create a bit of a bottleneck, because that's one more element that normally most of our games that we host are free to enter. There's not even a ticket, not even there might be a small nominal cost at the door, but most of the time it's not. So that's another element that's we're just like every other indoor sport. But just like you go to a Bomber game or up to the Jets games now, that's just one more thing that needs to be checked. And that's, I guess, the term new normal is always batted around.
Yeah.
I guess this is part of that. Hopefully it won't be there. This won't be the long-term normal, but it's a short-term normal, and then we'll be okay. So, but yeah, overall, people are just so excited to get back away from their screens and be back into some sense of reality. And whether they're the players themselves, or the coaches, or the parents just wanting to see their kids out and active, enjoying and having fun, which is really what it's all about. So yeah, no major issues, and hats off to everybody who was involved to make it like that, because it doesn't just happen. It does require some energy and communications and education and so on of what all this now means. So yeah, more than happy to see all this back, and we're also seeing other elements of basketball come back too. This coming weekend, the University of Winnipeg women's program basketball is hosting their crosstown rivals, the University of Manitoba and CMU, which is Canadian Mennonite University, at the Duckworth Center. That'll be the first official. It's an exhibition game series, a tournament, but it will be the first real game at that level played since February of 2020, which feels like forever ago. To see that come back, so it's exciting to see a number of different elements start back, and let's just hope we can stay like this and keep getting better every week.
Yeah, fingers are crossed here. Fingers are crossed that we stay like this for sure. But with just the vaccination rates and stuff, I'm feeling, from a fan perspective, feeling pretty good of seeing basketball and just other sports here in Manitoba being able to run successfully this year. Moving over to high school sports now, the Manitoba High School Athletic Association has released their update to their return to play sport plan for the 2021-2022 season. I'm assuming that, with basketball being indoors, it's going to be the same restrictions pretty much throughout, I'm guessing, for just indoor sports in general. But give us an update on what you've seen from the restrictions that are put in place in their return to school sport plan update.
Yeah, just like everything, it evolves every week. There's another little tweak, or hopefully for the better, but maybe it's a step backwards. But right now, volleyball is sort of predominant in the school system right now. So they're sort of the trailblazers getting back into the school system. I believe this last weekend, as they had a large number of tournaments that started back. I haven't heard anything, which is not that it's our sport. But usually, if it's something crazy or wild happened, I would have, and so that's good news. Sort of the no news is good news on that. Basketball in the schools really doesn't start until late November, early December in normal times. So we're still a few months away from seeing that, and then that's at the high school level, grades 10, 11, 12, and then the middle school basketball, which is usually grades 7, 8, 9, or 6, 7, 8. Depends where you are. Usually doesn't start back until January. So there's still a little bit of time for that to settle in. But really, that update that the Manitoba High School Athletic Association, which is a partner of ours, we share the same in the same building here as us, just clarified. I guess there is that element of grade 12 athlete that most grade 12 athletes or students start probably they're 17 when they start grade 12. And some or half of them are turning 18 by the end of their school year. And so that sort of straddles that line of that vaccine definition of the adult versus a minor. And so they just clarified that if you're technically in grade 12, that you would be still considered, I guess, an exception or exemption from needing that proof of vaccination in your latter few months of being in high school. In your grade 12 years. So there's some clarity points on that, which again, that's common and has been for a while now with when something comes out, there's always going to be a small adjustment because there's something that happens or wasn't anticipated. And then they make the small change. So yeah, that's something that just came out this week as well. And but most people have been very supportive of the efforts to get things back into some sense of normalcy, and we're just happy to be part of it.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Well, we'll be talking more basketball coming up here in the upcoming months. Might have you on again next week, Adam, depending on your schedule. But until we talk next time, thanks for always as for coming on Rise and Shine Manitoba and being a part of this week's episode. Take care.
Thanks, Graeme. We'll talk to you again.
Yeah, for sure. Adam Wedlake, Executive Director of Basketball Manitoba, joining Rise and Shine Manitoba here on this Wednesday, October 6th, 2021 edition of the show. We're going to go to our first commercial break. You guys are going to see a commercial from Fabricland Winkler, one of the official sponsors of Rise and Shine Manitoba. After the break, we're going to be giving you guys a solar report. Lorena Mitchell will be joining the show next. All coming up here on Manitoba Show, Rise and Shine Manitoba, here on ASTV Productions. Welcome back to Rise and Shine Manitoba. Joining me now on the Solar Report is CEO and founder of Evolve Green, host of Evolution Greenworks here on the network, Lorena Mitchell. Lorena, Nice to
Hey,
have
nice
you
to
on once
see
again.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So this week in solar news has just been phenomenal. We've had the ATCO Group through the Canadian Utilities Limited announced they acquired the rights to build 2 solar installation urban in Calgary. So this is going to help the Alberta power grid, and it's going to be powering up to 18,000 homes. So that's pretty big. It's the biggest one in Western Canada. It's 27 and 37 megawatts respectively that will be going in. They're 175,000 bifacial solar panels, to put that in perspective. So it's a lot of solar panels.
Yeah.
170 football fields, Canadian football fields, is how much space that will take in there. That's right in Calgary. That's the biggest urban development in Western Canada. So that's pretty exciting. They expect to offset 68,000 tons of carbon this year alone with the first year it goes in. So that's pretty amazing every year after. In the solar news, we have another one that released for Manitoba specific from Efficiency Manitoba for funding up to 75% for demonstration projects and or development of something that reduces the carbon footprint in Manitoba. So corporations are invited to apply. Check out Efficiency Manitoba for that in funding news. Next up, we've got our solar weather report. Yes, I said solar weather, Graeme. Can you believe it? We're going to talk about the sun and how this is impacting here on in Canada. We have a great report coming from our own government sites, and we have basically 3 sections is the way they have it laid out. So we have our polar region, which is up north, and then as you come down in the curve, you've got the auroral, and the auroral is like northern Manitoba region, kind of like halfway through Lake Winnipeg and up, if that gives you any reference points. And then down from that, we're just the suburaural area. So when we're talking about polar, suburaural, and rural, that's what we mean. And the last 24 hours of activity from what the magnetosphere is taking for hits from the solar, and this is flares and or just electrical activity that's usually generated by the sun and penetrates the earth on a normal basis. So it's been pretty quiet in the last 24 hours. We did have a little bit of unsettled events in the suburaural region, so northern Manitoba. And then over the next 6 hours, we expect actually the polar and the suburaural to be quiet with the auroral, so again, northern Manitoba, to get some activity. What does that mean? Well, a little bit of activity is going to cause things like overland towers that are transmitting signals like radio signals and or internet. Cell towers will have a little bit of disruption and delays. Over the next 24 hours, we're going to see calm, quiet with unsettled intervals in the auroral and polar regions. That's it for the last 24 and the next 24. Coming up next week, though, we're expecting an uptick in the solar flaring activities. So we might see a little more disruption in our power grids as well. So I just wanted to touch on the 7-day weather report because I think it kind of all impacts. We're actually above average temperature still. Can you believe that, Graeme?
That's actually nuts. That's crazy. Yeah, at this time of the year as well, when you usually see the weather,
Well above
get a
our
bit cold. Yeah.
Yeah, well above our normals. So today we're going to see up to 30 Celsius and sunny. Our wind is there, though. We're just before Thanksgiving, I think almost every year we have a big wind. Do you notice that too?
I do. It does get pretty windy near this time of the year for sure. And
We're
yeah,
we're 30 kilometers and we're going to be gusting to 50. That is through today and overnight. And then by Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're going to see some showers. There's 30 to 40% precipitation. So we could see some showers. But if you're planning your dinner for Monday, like some of us are, I know I am. I'm going to have Thanksgiving on, I mean, woohoo, it's not, just my close family, obviously,
yeah,
all double vax.
yeah.
But Monday's our day as well. So if we're looking at Thanksgiving Monday, it's going to be a high of 16 and partly cloudy. So it's going to be a very nice day to do something outdoors even. Tuesday is still 14. We're above average normals. And going into next week, though, we're going to see a little bit more precipitation over Monday, Tuesday time frame, or Tuesday, Wednesday time frame. That's it for this week's report.
Well, that was awesome. Lots of information that Lorena just gave you all, just for those interested in the solar news, just what's happening in the industry. We're going to move on to Evolve Green, of course, your company, you being the CEO and founder of the company. I saw something you posted on your Twitter. It was a little video about 1 minute and 10 seconds about creating renewables that work for you. Just take us through what the specifics of that is.
Yeah, so absolutely. When we design systems, we take into account how you use your power and what type of power you're using. So are you using gas? Are you using geo? Is it electricity? And how are you using that power? And design something that makes a lot of sense for you. And does battery backup make sense for you? Moving forward, I think we see more than 50% of our customers are asking for batteries. And we have great solutions for batteries now, and actually we're working on some bigger things with that as well. So we are going to have plug and play battery systems that can connect to a commercial entity and or a home coming up within a month. Everything's going to be ready to roll, and we'll launch that right here on Rise and Shine.
It'll be exciting for sure to have that launch on this show. Will be exciting for sure. Excited for that date. Evolution Greenworks, your show. Last week you had Chris Williamson on the show.
Yeah, no, I had Smileys on the show.
Smileys, right? Smileys.
Yeah. So we're actually this week we're looking at having 3 guys green on our show. We're gonna learn all about doing things in a greener way for your garden and the hydroponic kind of situation where you're trying to grow more of your food in a greenhouse. And we're going to be talking to 3 guys green this week.
Oh, sweet. Well, that's definitely interesting for sure. 3 guys green. Gonna be interesting to see what that's about. So that's what's on tap for Lorena's show this week. You guys can check it out here on ASTV Productions on the network. And yeah, Lorena will be talking next week about the solar report, just the solar news that's going on here in Manitoba and just in Canada in general. And yeah, can't wait to talk to you again next week. Gonna be a lot of fun.
We're also going to be touching on the drought situation in Manitoba next week, so we'll be including that in our solar report.
Yeah, should be good to get some insight on that for sure. The drought has been pretty prominent this year with just the way the weather has been, not much rain. But yeah, we'll have that for you guys next week, along with all the other stuff to do with the solar report, just some updates on Lorena's show, Evolution Greenworks. And yeah, until next week, Lorena, see you then.
Thank you.
Lorena Mitchell, the host of Evolution Greenworks here on the network, forgot that she did have Smileys on last week's edition of the show. My apologies about that. But yeah, nice to get some updates on what's been happening in solar here in Canada, and just her company Evolve Green, the great stuff they're doing. And yeah, we'll be talking about the drought and some other stuff like Lorena said next week on the show. We're going to take another commercial break in this edition of Rise and Shine Manitoba. Coming up after the break, we're going to have Harry Siemens, the Man on the Farm Report, presented by Wolf Enterprises, joining the show. Harry has still not joined the broadcast studio. It's still early. I told him to come on for 10:30 a.m. So we're going to give it some time. We're going to throw it to another commercial break. Coming up after the break, we'll have Harry in the studio. Speak of the devil, he's in the broadcast studio now. So we'll talk with Harry after this commercial break. Stick with us here on Manitoba Show, Rise and Shine Manitoba on ASTV Productions.
Why go solar? Solar is better than ever. Our revolutionary design and inverter equipment with the latest in solar panel technology for the ultimate in-home and business security. That's right, I said security. Grid security and security of your home are linked. Fortify your future today with a battery backup system. No maintenance, quiet running. Did you know in Manitoba, grid-connected, off-grid, and battery backup systems are 100% right off in the year you purchase for any company or farm? Do you want to back up your internet, keep your tills running, and the lights on? We can install a system that is right for you, with battery backup fully capable of taking on all those essential loads and keeping you running. When you call our experts at Evolve Green, ask about getting your free energy audit today. Call or email today to find out what system works best for you. 1-866-5EVOLVE or support@evolvegreen.ca. Also, be sure to check out our website at www.evolvegreen.ca.
Welcome back to Rise and Shine Manitoba here on ASTV Productions. Of course, you just heard from our lovely sponsor, Evolve Green, here on today's episode. Of course, the CEO and founder of Evolve Green, Lorena Mitchell, joined me most recently on today's episode on the Solar Report, giving us the breakdown on what's been happening in solar news here in Canada, talking about, stuff like the sun flares, how that's been affecting stuff. Talked about Evolve Green, the new stuff that they're offering, as well as her show Evolution Greenworks. Also talked to Adam Wedlake, Executive Director of Basketball Manitoba, earlier on in the show, just getting an update on what's been happening with basketball here in Manitoba. And it's great to hear that there's a lot of positives going down on that end in terms of basketball here in Manitoba. But we're going to move on from solar, move on from basketball, and talk about some agriculture now. The man himself, Harry Siemens, joining me now on this week's edition of the Farm Report, brought to you by Wolf Enterprises. And Harry is here in the studio now. Great to be joined by you on this Wednesday morning, my friend. How have things been going with you since the last time that we've talked?
No, very good. I mean, we can't complain about the weather, that's for sure, unless, of course, you're a farmer and, right now it's actually getting to be pretty dry again on the fields, but it's also good for fall tillage and fall application. And then, of course, there's a new thing that's not a new thing, but different equipment will be moving on fields and roads as well, and that's the manure applicators. That's where they clean out the dairy barns, the chicken barns, the hog barns, and so forth, and pump out the lagoons and spread it on the fields. And just for our viewers, and that's a good thing, because it's the best fertilizer that money can't buy, and that's the waste from animals turned into fertilizer for farmers and on their fields. And so that's what's going on. And the reason you'll see that now, the only time they can really apply it is in the fall and in the spring. There are certain times they really control it so that they apply it when the fields are most palatable for them to put the manure, and it doesn't involve runoff and those kinds of things. So it happens now, and I don't know what exact date is, but it happens right up until freeze up. There's a date in November where it becomes a cutoff so that nobody can spread. So they have to get all of that fertilizer pumped out of those lagoons, the barns, and so forth, and then transported and moved to fields, and then incorporated via cultivators into the fields. And so that's what's taking place now as well. So that's my opening remarks, Graeme.
Yeah. Well, That's some great news that you brought us. Definitely cool with that technology. Of course, you said it's the best stuff that money can't buy. Talking about this week's crop report, last week you said that over 90% of all Manitoba crops are harvested. The majority of the outstanding acres in soybeans, corn, and sunflowers, and that was last Friday. So the last time that we talked, so last Wednesday, you were referring to last Friday. Then just give us an update on the crop report this week.
Yeah, just again, for the summer months and fall and spring, this is a great time, Wednesday, because the crop report comes out Tuesday afternoon about 4:30. A fellow by the name of Dane Fraze with Manitoba Agriculture puts it out, and it's a detailed report, and anybody can have access to it. And so, again, it goes back to when they collect the data Friday. So the farmers have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and now it's Wednesday to continue harvest. The crop report said 95% done on Friday.
Wow.
So we could be up another 2%, except the crops that they're harvesting. Well, it's really interesting because seldom have we harvested corn and sunflowers this early. And when I listen to the farmers on Twitter, seldom, if ever, have we harvested corn and sunflowers before the Thanksgiving weekend. Normally, we wait for frost, and then it can be whenever that killing frost occurs. And if it doesn't, often if we don't get it at the end of August, and we don't ever want to get it at the end of August, or sometime in September, it'll come in October. But we haven't had a killing frost. We had a killing frost in May when the crops were just coming out, right? But that's damage. And of course, now the farmers are out there combining sunflowers, corn, like it's going out of style. And looking at the Manitoba crop report, the moisture content for corn is a big deal. Corn comes off in bulk. I mean, when corn it starts to yield, 100, 150 to 200 bushels an acre. Well, that takes a lot of bulk, trucks, carriage, grain carts, and then grain dryers. But now the corn is coming off of between 20 and 26% moisture content, meaning that they really may not have to fire up the grain dryers very much at all. And if they fire up grain dryers, the cost of growing corn just goes up significantly. Propane costs are high, carbon tax costs are put on top of all of that. So it's a real benefit now that farmers are able to take the corn off without, just naturally drying from nature. Sunflower is the same thing. I remember my father was a big sunflower grower back in late 50s, early 60s, and then beyond, of course. And I grew them myself. But I remember when we would have the combine, it was an old 90s special combine with a special finger type contraptions on the front to get the stalks of the sunflowers in. And our cab was like a plywood cab. We didn't have windows, but you had plywood in the front, side, top, and that protected you from the weather elements. And of course, and because often we did this when it was below zero. And so, it was cold, but that's when sunflowers combine the best. And so now, of course, as somebody said on Twitter, he said, what? It's the first time that he's combined sunflowers and he hasn't needed a toque,
Wow.
And that's awesome because it's so good out there. And yet, when I look at the crop report by Manitoba Agriculture, it's extremely dry, the top 30 centimeters of soil. I mean, all that moisture we had helped grow, but we haven't had significant rain
Yeah.
in almost a month, right?
Yeah.
And so it's getting to be dry because it was so very, very dry before. I mean, everybody that's outside and cleaning up their cottages, and I think you're one of those people. This is perfect weather. You get an extension, right? You get a little extension, but don't get caught. Make sure you got it cleaned up before it's all of a sudden boom, because we're also in that time of year where things can happen pretty quick, eh?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So it's great. You know what? The crops are coming off. The fields are getting tilled properly. Manure will be applied. But as the Manitoba Ag Report said, we're seeing, if you're driving down the highway and you see a cloud of dust, it's somebody tilling, and the dust is just coming up off that tillage system. So we get the good with the not so good, but right now let's enjoy the weather and hope for rain in the next couple of weeks and then lots of snow.
Yeah, that would be ideal for sure. And just going back to about cleaning up the cabin and stuff. My cabin's not winterized, so it could be a snowfall and then boom, could have some problems doing some end of the year cleaning. Let's just put it that way. But talking about an update on a story that you brought us last week. An update on the federal government suggesting they're going to put in an order to get the emissions down. They're setting some standards, some restrictions. Give us an update on what's been going on in that development.
Well, at this point, because we had the election and we have not really seen anything other than that article that I referred to last week. But at the same time, we're still obviously thinking about it because I'm actually and I don't have it ready. I'll have it ready for next week, but I'm on a Canadian agriculture group that has 102 producers and suppliers and so forth on WhatsApp. And they're from around the world, actually. It's hosted here by Louise and right out of Killarney, Manitoba. But there's a fella there, Ryan Dick, who works with ADM Fertilizer. So I sent him that news release that I referred to last week, and asked him to respond to certain questions about that. And there's some really interesting comments there, but I haven't written it totally, and we'll share about it. But he says if that's the case, we're going to see some real significant changes. Hopefully, there will be some biological systems that people are developing that can replace some of that, but it's not a good sense at this point for the future of agriculture down the road. It's going to be implemented bit by bit, and so far, we have a minority government, and so far it isn't implemented, but it's certainly ready to go if somebody wants to pull the trigger on it.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see your follow-up next week on this story, because it's definitely huge, right? A lot of money that is going to be lost due to these changes, which is just crazy, the amount of money you were talking to me about last week to do with that. Update on another story. You said that, you were looking for a chance to follow up. You sent a message to the genetics company. We were talking about last week about the hog producers. Any updates on that from your side? Have you gone through to them, or are you still waiting?
I got through to them, but they haven't responded yet because, you have to follow the correct protocol, right? So I went through two separate directions. I went with the local Manitoba Canadian communications person, and then I went with the international communications person. And they, of course, are in the Netherlands. So at this point, I haven't had the response from them, but it'll come, and then we'll have the update at that point. That's a good news story. Right now, we're continuing to focus on African swine fever. I'm actually in the background. I'm recording a presentation in the United States about some of those things that are going on in the pig business, and so yeah, it's like bacon has gone up in price like significantly, and so we're going to have to keep watching all of that. The feed prices have gone up; they've come back down a little bit, but hog producers use an awful lot of feed. And they have to buy the feed. They've got to process that feed and put it into a state that the pigs can use. And so that's a costly thing. So the pig prices are quite high, but the feed prices are almost as high. And so therefore the margin is still rather slim at this point. But in the United States, just as an aside, they come out every month, every quarter maybe. They call it the marketings of pigs, and that number has gone down. And so I haven't looked at the full report as to why that number is down, but it may be that there just aren't. I mean, we had all these hiccups when it came to COVID and so forth. Plants were shut down and those kinds of things. So we'll have to wait and see what exactly is going to progress. But you know what? For now, it's a positive going forward as far as agriculture is concerned. We've got a poorer crop than what we had hoped, but things turned around somewhat, and the guys are pretty happy with what is happening now with harvest and field preparation for next year.
We're going to end off today's episode, of course, as always, with Siemens Says, Harry Siemens farming tip of the week for farmers. Harry, I'm interested to see what your tip is for this week for farmers.
Well, the tip for this week would have to do with marketing. It's one thing to take off a crop and get it into the bin, but obviously it doesn't do much good if it stays there. So the key thing now is that marketing. There's such a movement of volatility. The volatility in the marketing prices. So, and we have a lot of marketing experts that are there to help farmers. And so my tip to the farmer today is, get yourself a great marketing expert who can help you with the marketing of your crop, because the crop's prices are big, high, and the crop is somewhat smaller. So let's do the maximum you can for your return on your investment and profits.
Harry Siemens, always a man with some wise words here on today's edition of the Farm Report. Joining me here on Rise and Shine Manitoba, the Farm Report, of course, presented by Wolf Enterprises. Harry, can't wait to talk to you next week. We're going to have some updates on some stories that we're getting some updates on today. Going to have some further information for us next week. Can't wait to hear it. Until then, Harry, you take care and stay safe. Eh?
Have a good weekend.
You too, Harry. Harry Siemens, the man on the Farm Report. Of course, the Farm Report presented by Wolf Enterprises. And yeah, always nice to get the rundown about what's going on here in agriculture, not only in Manitoba, but Harry also likes to fill me in on just what's happening throughout the United States as well and other places in the world. And if you guys have noticed my mug today, it's I'm using my Coffee with Graeme mug. Could not find the mug I usually use, but yeah, Coffee with Graeme. Of course, we will be having an episode going out tomorrow at 10 a.m. Central Daylight Time. As the weeks go on, we're going to start featuring Pilot-Mound Hockey Academy on the show. They won't be featured on the show this week, but it's going to be featured from Pilot-Mound Hockey Academy coming up is Gordie Tumilson, goalie coach and marketing director of Pilot-Mound Hockey Academy. He'll be joining me on the road after this commercial break to talk about this past weekend of games that the Academy's U15 male prep team and female U18 prep team had, as well as the upcoming schedule for the Academy this weekend. That's all coming up on this edition of Manitoba Show, Rise and Shine Manitoba. After the commercial break, I'll be joined by Gordie Tumilson here on Rise and Shine. Welcome back to Rise and Shine Manitoba. Joining me now is Gordie Tumilson. I cannot hear any sound from Gordie's side of things. It is a bit strange. He is on the road right now, so there are bound to be some technical difficulties. Gordie, are you able to hear me? And it seems that it is lagging pretty badly right now. His mic is muted as well. Can barely get through to him. He is on the road, so this was bound to happen. So we're gonna scrap the segment with Gordie. I think he could hear me, but I'm not too sure. The connection difficulties there were pretty severe. So yeah, we'll have Gordie on for Coffee with Graeme actually tomorrow. We'll include him in that edition of the show. Unfortunately, we won't be hearing about the past weekend of games that the Academy had here today on Rise and Shine. We'll get Gordie on Rise and Shine next week on Wednesday. And yeah, we'll have him on the show. We'll do a pre-recorded interview with him so the technical difficulties aren't as severe, and I'll be actually able to have a conversation with him, which I think will be beneficial to all parties involved, right? Me, Gordie, and the viewers watching the interview, because there's nothing worse than watching something that, the person that's being interviewed is lagging and you can barely hear their answers, right? That's no good. So we're going to take one last commercial break here in Rise and Shine Manitoba for today's episode. Might take one more actually after this next segment, which is Graeme's opinion coming up. I think it might be the most amount of stuff that I've ever talked about on Graeme's opinion. Yeah, we're going to have some great stuff coming up. Some news from, a story from around the NHL, from the NFL, sorry. And I mispronounced my words here because Gordie might be able to have him on still. Gordie, how's it going?
Graeme.
How's it going?
Well,
I can actually hear you. Sweet.
I think I found the dead spot between Carmen and Sperling. So there, I'm on right now. So let's do it.
Yeah, I can barely hear you, Gordie. The connection is pretty bad. Yeah, we're just gonna put an end to that there. Gonna message Gordie to tell him that he's not on today's episode of the show anymore due to his connection difficulties. Of course, like I said, we'll have him on next week's edition of Rise and Shine Manitoba. We're going to have him on Coffee with Graeme coming up on Thursday now. But yeah, like I was saying, after the commercial break, we're going to be going into Graeme's opinion, a segment I do here on Rise and Shine, of course. Going to be talking about some news from the NFL, some news from the CFL, to do with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, a receiver most notably. Going to also be giving you guys my top 10 player rankings in the NHL for centermen, so top 10 centermen in my opinion. And also going to be giving you guys my CFL Week 9 power rankings. I guess it is Week 10 now in the CFL coming up this week, so going to be my power rankings heading into Week 10, and then also going to be giving you guys some game predictions for the CFL for Week 10, who I think are going to win, and also going to be throwing in my worst fast food experience. That's all coming up here after the break here on Manitoba Show, Rise and Shine Manitoba, here on ASTV Productions. Stick around.
Hello, my name is Lorena Mitchell, owner of Evolve Green. And here at Evolve Green, we take the environment very seriously. We have a 10 kilowatt solar system that offsets our main facility by 75%, as well as maintaining natural prairie on our grounds. Our mission, creating renewables that work for you. I started Evolve Green in 2008 with a passion for the environment and wanting to change my corner of the world. And that remains the same today. Through design, consult, and installation, we provide renewable energy systems and storage integration. Here at Evolve Green, we help Canadians rethink power and storage to help fortify our children's future. To learn more, visit evolvegreen.ca.
Welcome back to Rise and Shine Manitoba here on ASTV Productions. My apologies there for the dead air after this most recent commercial break. Was just messaging Gordie to line things up for next week and for his appearance that he's going to be making on this week's edition of Coffee with Graeme. Of course, Coffee with Graeme, you can check it out here on ASTV Productions. It's on our Facebook. You can watch it there at ASTV Productions, on our website as well at astvproductions.com, and anywhere else you watch our shows. And yeah, it's going to be going out tomorrow morning, that edition of Coffee with Graeme at 10 a.m. Central Daylight Time. It's not just going to be Gordie joining that show tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of other great guests, some players, well, a player from the MMJHL, a coach as well from the Jeff Mitchell, head coach of the St. Vital Junior Vics, and Transcona Railer Express goaltender Dylan Arnold will be joining me in tomorrow's episode. Gonna also have Pembina Valley Hawks head coach Dana Bell on. Was supposed to have him on yesterday's edition of Coffee with Graeme. For those of you that are not aware, we do 2 episodes per week of Coffee with Graeme, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday. I'm still figuring out how to renew my editing software. I use Adobe. I use Premiere Pro. Audition for audio as well. I'm just figuring out cost plans right now, how to sort it out, how to split it with my editor. So yeah, gonna get that figured out sometime today, hopefully, and get you guys that interview with Dana Bell out for you guys to see as well. Gonna have some highlights from the Pembina Valley Hawks game from this past weekend where they faced off against the Central Plains Capitals. ASTV Productions, of course, was covering that game on Sunday in Morden, Manitoba. Was a heck of a game. Went to a shootout. Pembina Valley Cambry Martins ends up burying her shootout winner in that game to put Pembina Valley over the top. And before we actually get into Graeme's opinion, since we are partnered with Pilot-Mound and we cover all of their home games out of their 3 teams, I'm going to let you guys know about what games you'll be able to watch this upcoming weekend. So looking at the schedule, just have to pull it up here because I can't remember off the top of my head. There's so many games on this schedule. But yeah, starting on Friday at 7 p.m., the U17 male program will be taking on the Indigenous Sports Academy. I'm pretty sure that's the name. Indigenous Sports Academy, that's the full name. It just has Indigenous on my on the schedule that was sent out. Let's just double check here. Yes, they'll be the U17s, the males will be going up against the Indigenous Sports Academy on Friday at 7 p.m. You can catch that one on the network at ASTV Productions. And then on the 9th, which is on the Saturday at 2 p.m., the U17s will be back in action again against the Indigenous Sports Academy. And then we got some other leagues to cover. One league in particular, we'll be covering the MFHL. Of course, we're covering all the Pembina Valley Hawks home games this season. They'll be in action on Saturday at 5:15 p.m. with a battle of the undefeateds in the league right now. Both them and Westman, that's the team they're taking on, the Westman Wildcats, at 5:15 p.m. on Saturday. Both teams are sitting at 2-0 right now, so that one should be a good one. That's for sure. Two undefeated teams early on in the season going up against each other. So that's the schedule for Saturday. Then on Sunday, it starts at 10 a.m. with another game between the U17 male prep program from Pilot-Mound Hockey Academy taking on the Indigenous Sports Academy once again. And then we'll also have that looks like the only other game that we'll cover this weekend here on the schedule. So stay tuned for that coming up this weekend on the network. I'll be doing play-by-play commentary for all of those games, and should be seeing a lot of great hockey being played this weekend as the regular season starts rolling here for these teams. But going into the segment that you guys have probably been all waiting for since I started this last segment of the show after the most recent commercial break from Evolve Green. Going to be talking about some Graeme's opinion. This is going to be a long one today. Even though they are always pretty long, I ramble on quite a bit. I'm trying to get better at that. Hopefully getting better at that today. But going to have some NFL news, some CFL news, some NHL rankings, some top 10 player rankings, as well as the CFL power rankings for this week, coming into this week 10 in the CFL, as well as some week 10 predictions. And just to clarify about the player rankings, I decided to only do the centerman rankings for the NHL this week, who my top 10 centermen in the league are at this point. Going to be changing. I said at first I was going to have left winger rankings and right winger rankings. What I'm thinking of doing is just combining it into one, just top 10 best wingers in the NHL, using that in next week's edition of the show, as well as releasing my defensive top 10 rankings and my top 10 goaltending rankings. And maybe in that episode, depending on what's on tap for Graeme's opinion next week, going to be giving you guys my outright top 10 players in the NHL rankings. But let's start off with the first story. Urban Meyer in the NFL, first-year head coach, his first ever head coaching job in the NFL. Of course, a college football legend as a coach in terms of results, his off-field situations and stuff that he's gone through in his career. It could say otherwise, but just in terms of a football coach, Urban Meyer has been one of the best coaches in college football during his time of coaching. But he's the head coach of the Jaguars this season, and he got in some hot water this week. A viral video surfaced. Not sure if you guys have seen it. I'm not going to show it here because it is pretty inappropriate. Basically, he was seen getting a dance from a younger girl in this video, and it's not a great look for Urban Meyer. This is a family man. This is a guy with kids, and he's out here after a loss, even though it was said the club, he owned it where he was in Columbus, Ohio. Even though he did own it, that's no excuse for what he did. Just talking from a football standpoint, you just lost your fourth game this season. You're 0-4. You haven't won a game. And you don't go back with a team on the flight to try to strategize and try to get better. Now, look, the Jaguars, it's going to take some time for this roster to get to the point where they're going to contend, right? It's been brutal for them ever since that video came out where, Gardner Minshew was pumping up the team after their first win of the week in week 1 of the season last year. Since then, the Jaguars have not won a regular season game. But going away from that, you're Urban Meyer, you're a rookie head coach. You've already done some questionable things during your time here as a head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Just like back in February, he hired Iowa State strength and conditioning coach Chris Doyle as the Jaguars' new director of sports performance. But turns out this guy had multiple racism and bully accusations against him, and Urban Meyer vetted for him. The OTA funds, not as bad, but the guy obviously stuck in college, didn't follow the rules, did not know that you can have no contact in off-season practices. He ended up getting fined money. Of course, he made a questionable signing Tim Tebow. Signed him to the tight end position and ended up cutting him. So it was a huge waste of time. Talking about the draft pick, Travis Etienne, I'm not sure how much of a part Urban Meyer had in that, but just the organization as a whole. What are you doing? You draft the only position that you basically didn't need. And Travis Etienne, he was a star, superstar in college. He was one of the best running backs in the nation, but still, you got a guy like James Robinson. Who rushed for 1,000 yards the season before. Why would you pick that position to improve on? So overall, the Jaguars, this organization is a mess, but it gets worse because of this viral video. So already told you guys he was seen dancing with a younger girl, or the girl was dancing on him. Basically, he was just sitting there and doing some pretty inappropriate things. Some of the video was censored out, a part of it. A guy with a wife and kids decides to go to the club after a loss, falling to 0-4, and not flying with the team. And quote from the owner, Shad Khan, he said, "I have addressed this matter with Urban. Specifics of our conversation will be held in confidence. What I will say is his conduct last week was inexcusable. I appreciate Urban's remorse, which I believe is sincere. Now he must regain our trust and respect." 4 regular season games in, and your new head coach already has to regain the trust and respect of the owner, of the team. And it gets worse. Quotes from players, these are all anonymous, but these have been things that have been coming up a lot. One player, or maybe it's the same player saying these things, but I don't know. A player said that he has zero credibility in the stadium. He had very little to begin with. Players were particularly put off. This isn't a quote now. This is just from an article that I got some of this information from. Players were particularly put off by the fact that Urban canceled Monday's team meeting as he dealt with the uproar over the videos of him and a young woman getting cozy in that Ohio bar. He even canceled the team meeting. He was too scared, a player said. We looked at him like WTF. I'm sure you guys all know what that means. Right when he left, everyone started dying and laughing, and he knew. So he knew that players were laughing at him. Bottom line, said the player, "It's bad. I don't know how he's going to function." Final thoughts on this is, and I've been hearing a bunch of people in the mainstream media like ESPN saying this shouldn't be a fireable offense. And, as sick as the video is of Urban Meyer doing that stuff, being a married man that he is, if it wasn't affecting the team and the team shrugged it off and it wasn't affecting the player morale in the room and how they viewed him, this wouldn't be as big of an issue, I guess. But Urban Meyer, just looking at his history, he's been doing a lot of questionable things off the field from what I've read. In his history, it hasn't changed here in Jacksonville. Seems like it's a very questionable hire, as much as Urban Meyer knows the game. If it's like a star player, for example. Say he has all the talent in the world, but he has a toxic personality that in situations far outweighs the talent in that point. In this case, I guess I should say. And for Urban Meyer, if you got players saying stuff like he has zero credibility in the stadium, he had very little to begin with. We looked at him like, what the heck? You cancel, your Monday team meeting to deal with the uproar. So now you're being a distraction. You're still the biggest part of the problem. In terms of the personnel on this team right now, you hire a guy that, as your first hire, a guy that has bully and racist history. The bottom line is this, like a player said, I don't know how he's going to function, but the bottom line is that if Urban Meyer at this point has lost the room already and lost the respect of the team, why continue with him? Maybe he'll be gone at the end of the season, but if players don't respect him, if players go out and say he has zero credibility and had very little to begin with, there's been rumors that players, or maybe news, but I've heard stuff like players don't like his coaching style. He's too stuck in his college ways. Urban's definitely had some problems adjusting to the NFL and can't handle the pressures of losing, so he doesn't come back with team on the plane, which is just ridiculous. It's ridiculous that this guy got the job to begin with, as good as he was in college. But if you lost the room, how are you going to get better as a team? Even though Jacksonville, there was no way they were making the playoffs before this season happened, but you got to get rid of a cancer in the room. It seems like Urban Meyer is that right now. Respect to everything he's done in his career as a college coach, out of everything he's done, like winning the games he's been able to do. Pretty sure the guys won national championships, but this is the NFL now. This is a different animal. It's a different beast. Urban, my suggestion to you, if you ever do watch this, you should just go back to college and not coach in the NFL, because it seems like you ain't ready to handle the big boy job. Going into a serious situation now, Kenny Lawler arrested for impaired driving this week. Kenny, this is a statement put out by the Bombers saying Kenny informed the team today of his arrest for operating a motor vehicle while impaired early this morning. Upon further investigation, the club has suspended Kenny for Friday's game, which is this week's upcoming game at home for the Bombers against the Edmonton Elks, and has reported the incident to the league officials. The Blue Bombers wrote in a statement. We take this incident very seriously, the team went on to say, and have spoken at length with Kenny throughout the day. Kenny recognizes the seriousness of the situation and that this type of behavior is unacceptable and inexcusable. He has agreed to seek assistance as it relates to alcohol abuse and has cooperated fully with police on the matter. The team said it reported the incident to the CFL's head office and that Lawler agreed to seek help for alcohol abuse, right? Lawler is going to miss Friday's game due to the suspension by the team. And this is all while he was coming off a career game against the BC Lions last Friday where he put up over 200 yards. Pretty sure he had 2 TDs now. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but that's besides the point. This is a very serious situation. A very talented football player made a poor judgment call. And he admitted that he's agreed he's pretty much admitted this type of behavior is unacceptable and inexcusable, and he's agreed to seek assistance as it relates to alcohol abuse. So you definitely gotta think he's definitely going through it with the alcohol abuse is no joke. It's something that's sad to see people fall into that lane of having to abuse alcohol like that. But at the same time, something like this is very serious, and them suspending him for one game, I'm surprised it's only one game. In a way, I don't know how serious the accident was, but it's serious when you get behind a wheel impaired. And Kenny Lawler, in my opinion, if he's able to learn from this situation, if he gets the help he needs, I see no reason why he can't come back to the CFL and play for the Bombers. He's got all the talent in the world. Yes, he's got himself into a bad situation, but you can just, I know that people could just say things, but you can just tell by his words that you can feel the remorse, and you can feel that he's sorry from, the videos that have been out of him speaking about the matter too. Not sure if there is, but the bottom line is Kenny Lawler made a stupid mistake. Obvious that, since he's, going to seek assistance as it relates to alcohol abuse, obvious that he does seem to have a problem with alcohol. And yeah, for me, I just hope that Kenny Lawler gets the help he needs and can get through this, because it could be, it's a hard cycle to break. And I can't speak in experience to it. I'm not an alcoholic, but for people who are alcoholics out there, I can't even imagine how hard it is, to go through something like this, with alcohol abuse. But Kenny, I hope he learns from his mistake. I hope this is a lesson that he holds with him for his whole life, because this is something that could ruin your career. I don't think this will be the case for Kenny if he shows that he is truly remorseful through his actions. Actions speak louder than words. And, just through it all, this is a guy with great talent who's emerged as the Bombers' #1 receiver this season. I hope he gets his act together, and is able to get better and get the help he needs and get through this thing. Time will tell. Obviously, he is suspended for one game. Not sure if it's only going to be the one game, if he's going to make his return after. But yeah, Kenny Lawler, I hope that he can get through it and play in a Blue Bombers jersey again. I think that, like I said, if he does get the help he needs, if he shows that he's, making strides, making changes through action, I think that it's going to be a good sign that he will be back playing for the Bombers, but in a game. But yeah, alcohol abuse, I hope that Kenny gets the help he needs, because it's just such a sad situation. And going through alcohol abuse. And I hope that everyone in the motor vehicle, I hope that he learns from it and never gets behind a motor vehicle impaired again, which I feel like he's definitely learned from his situation. But only time will tell with the Kenny Lawler situation. Moving into my top 10 player rankings now for the NHL, my top 10 centers in the league. And, I'm sure this is going to be debated. I'm sure this is going to be debatable. I'm sure that people will disagree with some of my takes. But guess what? This is Graeme's opinion. These are my takes of the top 10 centers in the NHL. Let's get down to it. Number 10, I got Matthew Barzal of the New York Islanders, a player that had a very strong rookie season in the league. I'm pretty sure he was up over a point per game, became the #1 guy after John Tavares left for Toronto, And every single season, Barzal has just been getting better and better. It's the little things in Matt Barzal's game that really draw him to me. He's just his puck possession, his zone entries, his ability to create with his vision is just some of the things that make Barzal a player that I think any franchise would want. Yes, his offensive production isn't like some of the best centers in the NHL, but I also think that that's because he is bogged down in Trotz's system, a system that's very defensive, and we've seen it since Trotz has taken over that the offensive production from the Islanders has gone down significantly. But Matt Barzal can do anything you want out there as a player. His offensive game, I think, has traits of being elite. He's got great puck poise, waits for stuff to open up and makes very nice passes. One of the best zone entry players in the league, one of the fastest players in the league. And yeah, Matt Barzal, I think he's continuing year in and year out and improving his defensive game, becoming that two-way player in Trotz's system. And I think he's going to take another step this year, as I think the Islanders will be one of those teams to watch in the Metropolitan Division. Moving on to Mark Scheifele. He's my number 9. This could be some bias here, but just looking at it objectively, just looking at the stats, one of the most underrated players at this position. 63 points in 56 games last season. He's been producing offense over a point per game since the 2018-19 season. He's been the driving force for this team offensively as well, besides a guy like Ehlers. But in terms of that first line, Scheifele's really been the driving force. As great as Kyle Connor is, I think of him more as a weapon. Of course, Kyle Connor, I think, has made improvements in his game this past season for the Jets, even though that line isn't great defensively by any means. Scheifele, even though his defense has been shaky at points, he's also, been an average defender. And I think that we all know that it isn't his strength. I think that systems and the defensive pairings that the Jets have had to have for the past 2 seasons have, played a part to an extent about a guy like Scheifele, like this team struggling defensively. But obviously Scheifele's main strength of his game is his offense. He's a guy that consistently puts up points year in and year out, over a point per game player. And I think that Scheifele has deserved this spot to be in the top 10 centers. Just looking at his impact too, even though I think that the Jets were so disappointing getting swept by the Montreal Canadiens just 2 years in a row with Scheifele going out. It was a big blow to the team. You could see some of that energy going out of the lineup. And yeah, Scheifele, I think that he is a valuable part of the Jets' success. I think that he's proven that he can be in the top 10 centermen in the league, just looking at his resume. Brayden Point comes in at number 8, the playoff performer himself. His point production has gone down since that 92-point season, but at the same time, Brayden Point has just overall gotten better and better overall in his game. Just his IQ with the puck, his vision is something that really sets him apart from a lot of players in this league. Of course, playing with a guy like Nikita Kucherov and I believe Andre Palat on that first line is definitely helps him. But Brayden Point has been solid defensively, solid offensively. He's been one of the best playoff performers for the last 2 seasons. You could argue maybe he's been the best playoff performer out of the forwards down the stretch for Tampa Bay. But, looking at Brayden Point, what he brings to the table, yes, he's smaller, but he's fast, he's shifty, he's got great hands, he can pass the puck, and he can really attack a defenseman and make him look silly. And Brayden Point, back-to-back Stanley Cups. Yes, it's a team achievement, but he's been a huge part of why they've been able to be back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, just with him playing his part. And I think that after getting paid, that could be maybe one of the best contracts in terms of value in the league heading forward. Braden Point is a heck of a player. Number 7, we got Patrice Bergeron, a perennial Selke candidate, allows his teammates with his defense to do so much with his defensive ability. Still a top 3 defensive forward in the league for me. And even though he doesn't put up crazy offensive stats, that's never really been his game. This is a guy that is still one of the most complete 200-foot players in the NHL. He's a guy that's going to be pivotal to the Boston Bruins' success heading forward in this season, especially with David Krejci departing. And Patrice Bergeron just does everything you want a shutdown centerman to do. He can add offense as well. There's been no one better in the league defensively at the centerman position, except for maybe an Alexander Barkov. But really, Barkov's defensive game was, massively improved this year, even though that Barkov has always been that defensive centerman, right? That two-way centerman. But Bergeron has always been that guy that has been a perennial Selke candidate. He's a guy, like I said, allows his teammates to do so much with his defensive ability. Top 3 defensive forward in the league, and he's just a guy that can put up offense as well. If I'm picking any centerman in the league to shut down a team's first line or top line, Patrice Bergeron is among the top players that I would have on a line to be able to do that. Moving on to number 6. Alexander Barkov, Sasha Barkov, whatever you want to call him, last year's Selke winner. His ability to, be able to be in the right position to close in and take away pucks along with his defensive position is elite. And that's the reason he, I think, won the Selke last year, due with the fact that Florida had one of their highest finishes in the standings in recent memory. This is a guy that can put up points too. 58 points in 50 games last season, 26 goals, 32 assists. Didn't play on a line with Huberdeau this season either, barely, if anything. And he's played with him prior in his career, and he was still able to get the job done. And I think be the best player on this Florida Panthers team. He does all the little things really good well, finds open space on the ice to get open, to make himself available, makes simple plays like quick passes, great shot and one-timing ability as well. And Alex Barkov, I think that he, is going to continue to establish himself as one of the best defensive forwards in the league. He already did that this season with the Selke. This is a guy I think that is going to be in that Selke conversation year in and year out, heading forward in the prime of his career, and a guy that I think is going to continue to produce offense as well. Can't get any better than that. Moving into the number 5 player, it's Austin Matthews, number 5 centerman on my list that I have ranked the league's best goal scorer for this moment right now. We'll see what Alexander Ovechkin and David Pastrnak have to say about that this season, but 41 goals last season in 52 games. Absolutely phenomenal, insane. Yes, he was playing in the weak North Division. I get it. But just what he was doing last season, he was a top 3 Hart finalist nominee, and for good reason. This is a guy that is dominant in the offensive zone, can score in many different ways, and a guy that scores most of his goals at even strength as well. Yes, he has a guy like Mitch Marner on his team, but what great players haven't had sidekicks? And I'm not calling Austin Matthews great just yet because of his playoff resume, his experience. He still needs to get it done there. I'm thinking great more in terms of the potential that he has. And honestly, the potential that he has is to be a franchise centerman of a team. And if Austin Matthews, if that core for Toronto can just grow and start to figure things out, well, we'll see what happens come playoff time, but that's going to be a tough Atlantic this year. But moving away from that, Austin Matthews, league's best goal scorer at this point, dominant in the offensive zone, like I said, can score in many different ways, and is a guy that won the Rocket Richard last year by a landslide. And for him here, his defensive game, it can be good, but it's a bit inconsistent at times. But I think you could say that for a lot of the Toronto Maple Leafs, how they're just inconsistent at times. But yeah, Austin Matthews goes at number 5 for me. Number 4, I got Leon Draisaitl, 84 points in 56 games played last season. This guy won the Hart Trophy back, not this past season, but the year before in 2019-2020. He had 31 goals, 53 assists this year. Has proven he can provide offense without Connor McDavid. Look, that was the knock on him, but he played on a line this season with Yamamoto and Cahoon. And he's proven that he can, still be that guy on that line, even though those guys, Yamamoto and Cahoon, aren't anywhere near the player that Draisaitl is. But that just goes into he can handle stuff on his own. And yes, he flamed out in the playoffs, but also Connor Hellebuyck had one of the greatest performances out of any goaltender of the playoffs this season. This guy's a force on a power play. Pairing him with McDavid, that's just a recipe for disaster for teams when that power play is on. He's put up back-to-back 100-plus point seasons, and sure, having McDavid helps, but Leon has been able to find ways to open space for himself and find the open space to get in that position for those one-timers. That ability alone, just with him in his career putting up 51 season, putting up 43 in one season, putting up over 30 this year with 31. He's in that category, I think, of guys that can be elite goal scorers in this league, and his ability to find the open man as well as also elite. He's had 50 plus assists in his last 3 seasons, and Leon here being ranked over Matthews, I just feel like Leon offers more overall offensively with his his playmaking ability, and he can also put the puck in the net. He's also, I think, in terms of him and Matthews, I'm not sure. I haven't seen them enough in game to judge this, but won't say what I was going to say, talking about their defense. But yeah, just in terms of offensive value, I think that Draisaitl just offers a bit more than Austin Matthews. And as a player, I think as a face-off man offers, as a centerman, offers a bit more value than Austin Matthews. That's why I got Draisaitl here at number 4. Moving into number 3, it's Sidney Crosby. Look, Sidney Crosby, 62 points in 55 games played last season, 24 goals, 38 assists. And it's the simple things that have kept Crosby in this conversation for being in the top 3, and I still think he is. That's why I got him at number 3. He has this ability to keep possession of the puck with defenders all over him and fend him off. Goes into his strength on his skates and his strong edges. That's what that goes into, in my opinion. Best hand-eye in the game, maybe the best backhand, I'd say it is. Best backhand in the game, maybe giving it to Patty Kane, but Crosby's definitely top 2 in that regard. One of the best two-way centermen in the game. Still consistent face-off taker, over 50% for his career, and has shown last season that he can carry the load on his own without his number 2 being out. And we saw what Pittsburgh was able to do last season with Crosby leading the way, being able to get that number 1 seed in I forgot what division it was. I believe it might have been the East Division. No matter what, though, he played in a very tough division when you talk about the Boston Bruins, the New York Islanders, Washington Capitals, list goes on about how tough that division was. But Crosby here being at this number 3 position, I get it. Draisaitl and Matthews are better, offensive players in terms of production at this point. But one thing that these two don't have is the complete game like Sidney Crosby has. And Sidney Crosby has been able to prove it throughout time and time again in his career that even though, his offense is starting to go down, he stayed consistent, still over a point per game in the past 2 seasons that he's played. And for Sidney Crosby, I still think he's motivated to get another cup. I don't know how that'll happen, if it'll happen, but I still think that Crosby, if I was going to pick any 3 centers in the league, he'd be at number 3 just because of his consistency. He can still be elite in the offensive zone, and he can be elite defensively as well. Moving into number 2, Nathan MacKinnon, 65 points in 48 games last season. 20 goals, 45 assists. This is a power forward with an elite offensive skill set, ranking him over Crosby because his offense, I think, is far superior to Crosby's at this point in his career. And I also like his defensive game. Great two-way player, but let's talk about his offense first. A power forward with an elite offensive skill set, one of the best releases in the show right now. Power skater, powerful stride, fast, elite edges, dominant in the corners, can score from anywhere in the offensive zone. And this is also a guy that has proven that he can take on the load without, his best weapons not being there, like back in 2019-2020 with Rantanen and Landeskog being out. He was able to carry the load. Those guys were healthy this season, and MacKinnon was still the best player on that line. The offense on that line goes through MacKinnon, and I think that he's just going to continue getting better and better, be motivated by trying to get that Stanley Cup. You can tell he's very angry. He hasn't gotten one yet. And with this team, having a guy like Rantanen back, of course, but having a guy like Landeskog back, I think that line has a case besides the Boston's top line of Pastrnak, Bergeron, and Marchand of being the best in the league. But MacKinnon, having him ranked over Crosby, for me, it's simple. His offense, I think, at this point is better than Crosby's is. And I just feel that his defensive game, his elite defensive game, has really allowed for him to solidify himself as that second best centerman in the league. He's like a poor man's McDavid. He can do basically everything McDavid can do. He has a better shot, I'd say, than McDavid, but McDavid, who is my number 1 centerman, is just on another level than anybody. And I said that it was, close last year between who the top 2 best players in the world were, and McDavid and MacKinnon. I always said I'd lean towards McDavid, and the big knock on him was just his defensive game and his physicality. I don't think McDavid is ever going to be this physical specimen that MacKinnon is, not even close. They're just built differently. But I do think, even though his defense isn't elite, I don't think it's great. I think it's average good. Looking at what McDavid did last season, got a lot more positionally sound in his own end, even though the playoffs, they fell apart. But I also think that comes down to the Oilers not building the team around McDavid. And yeah, you can also talk about the money that he takes, and that does, I think, play a part into it. The money that he takes. They can't build a team around like McDavid like they can around MacKinnon because MacKinnon chose to take a pay cut. But that's just the truth in sports. But McDavid, looking at it, the money that they spent on him, he's everything worth that. He could even be getting underpaid for the production that he has out there, right? He's box office. He is far and away the best offensive player in the league right now. Far, in my opinion, I think that just his skill set alone, offensively, makes him the best offensive talent that I've ever seen with my own two eyes. And yes, I think that his skill set, very different than a Crosby or an Ovi or a Patty Kane. I think that McDavid's is the most electrifying and best offensive skill set that I've ever seen and that we've ever seen in the game, period. Yes, he was going against the weak North Division last season, who also had a team in the Stanley Cup with the Montreal Canadiens, but you know, you can't ignore the fact that this man was on another level this season, and he has been for his whole career. 105 points in 56 games last season, 33 goals, 72 assists. The best offensive player in the world, like I already said. His ability to hit top speed, along with his edges, paired with that, make him the league's best skater, not to mention his ability to stick handle with the puck at high speeds and maintain it. Just a guy that attacks defenders many different ways effectively at an elite level. Elite IQ, best playmaker in the league right now at this point. And I think that one thing McDavid does so well is he knows his speed is such an asset. He knows that he has speed that no one else in this league does, or not many come close to McDavid in terms of speed. It's just generational. It's off the mark. He's able to, at times use his high IQ, hold that puck for a bit longer, draw people in, and open up a team's defense with just how much attention he draws. This is the guy who won the Hart last season. I assume he won the Ted Lindsay. I can't remember off the top of my head, but Connor McDavid, I'll say it again, and I'll always say it. I think at this point, there could be someone who comes along that has a better skill set than him offensively, but there is no one else in the league right now that has McDavid's skill set offensively. It's not even close. And I think that, yes, his defensive game is the weak part of his game. But in that sense, I think that he made improvements last season. I think that he's an average defender who can also be a good defender at points, but mainly average defense. I don't think that his defensive woes are that bad, though, because when you take a look at McDavid's offensive talent, it far outweighs any concerns that he has defensively. And the thing is, he's still young in his career. He's going to continue and be motivated to work and improve his defensive game. So, those are my top 10 NHL player rankings for centers, wingers, defensemen, and goaltenders for sure coming next week on the show. And yeah, leave a comment down below if you guys agreed or disagreed with my list, who you would change, which placement you would change. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed that part of Graham's opinion, also be sure to leave a like down below in wherever you're watching, or a comment as well to let us know how I did. Okay, gonna make this quick. CFL power rankings after week 9. Let's start it off. I got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers at number 1. Kind of weird doing it like this, but Winnipeg Blue Bombers at number 1, 7-1 this season. A statement 30-9 win over the BC Lions last week. This team has a top 3 offense, best defense in the league, shut down the best QB in the league, and Collaros making a case for being one of the league's best, and I think that he has been all season at the QB position. 28 for 33 last week, 417 yards, 2 TDs, 0 interceptions. That's my number 1 team on the power rankings. We'll go from the bottom of the list now. Edmonton Elks at number 9. 2-5 this season. Lost to the Red Blacks, and really this team suffering right now in due to them not having Trevor Harris. I think Trevor Harris being out is huge for this team. This team has great talent offensively. Of course, James Wilder Jr., Darrell Walker, Greg Ellenson, the boys that they have, but you need a QB to win this league, and they, at this point with Trevor Harris out, as much as Cornelius has shown flashes, I don't think he's going to be that guy to come out and lead this Edmonton team back out of a hole. With how good the West is this season, it's going to be tough for Edmonton to make a playoff spot. But yeah, Edmonton here in my ninth position after Ottawa beat them last week, and Ottawa gets the number 8 spot. Now, I know that I've criticized Ottawa many times, and I know that I said it's the least talented roster in the league, and I still think I do stand by that. But this team, don't get it twisted, they have talent. Looking at their receivers, RJ Harris has talent. Kenny Stafford has talent. And, Timothy Flanders is kind of nice as well. But other than that, this team really doesn't have much. But can they find their quarterback? And they might have last week, but it's still yet to be seen. But this was the best quarterback outing that we've seen from a Ottawa Red Blacks QB all season. Caleb Evans ended up getting his first career start, 3 touchdowns, 191 yards, no interceptions, and 15 for 22 in the air. Hey, if you're an Ottawa fan, you're going to take that. He made some really nice plays, beating that Edmonton secondary. But, is it going to last for the Red Blacks? You've beaten Edmonton twice this season, but how are you going to hold up when you play a team like the Toronto Argonauts, who have been really strong as of late this season? How are you going to hold up when you play a team like Montreal? They've already beat you this year and by quite a bit. For me, Ottawa right now has shown that, obviously they do have some talent. You need to have talent to play in this league. But I still stand by the notion that right now this team is in no place to really make a push up the standings. This is still the worst team in the East. And for some reason, they have Edmonton's number this season. Moving on to number 7, the Calgary Stampeders. Very impressive win by Calgary last week, holding Cody Fajardo to no touchdowns in the air, 1 interception, and Bo Levi got the start, and Bo Levi ended up having, a solid game. I don't think that interception was his fault from looking back at it. Just looking back at it, I'm pretty sure it went off one of his receivers and then was picked off by Ed Gainey. But, this Calgary team, obviously, they have some players, right? Kadeem Carey has been pretty solid for them this season. A guy that's been able to put up touchdowns here and there. I just feel like this Calgary team, it depends on Bo. It depends on that QB situation. If, Bo Levi Mitchell can come out and play solid football, this team has a very good chance of winning. If he doesn't, if they don't get solid play from the quarterback position, it's pretty tough because this Calgary team doesn't have the same amount of talent as they usually do out in their skill positions this season. You don't have an Eric Rogers. You don't have some of the guys that you've had before. This defense this season, even though they had a solid game against Saskatchewan, just looking at Calgary this year, their defense at points have given up, some... Actually, no, their defense hasn't been too bad this year. It's been that offense for them. That offense, it relies on Bo if he can get it done. It relies on Jake Meyer if he can step in and get the job done. It's just tough, I think, for Calgary this season. It depends if they get a win against Saskatchewan. They're right back in that conversation for making the playoffs. But yeah, at this point, the Stamps, a huge win for them. I just feel like they don't have as much talent as they've usually had in years at those skill positions. And it's going to be interesting to see for sure what they'll be able to do moving forward. But looking at the Hamilton Tiger Cats, a tough one to swallow last week, up 17-3 heading into the fourth quarter. Jeremiah Mazzoli played and had decent numbers, but no touchdowns, no interceptions. Sean Erlington Thomas had a TD, but not much else. Brandon Banks was back in the lineup, but had minimal production. And that's just been the story for Hamilton this year. This offense that was supposed to be so dynamic can't seem to get it going. They have a lot of turnover with their quarterback in terms of who's starting. First Mazzoli, then Evans, and then Watford back to Mazzoli. So they've gone full circle for sure with their quarterbacks. But this offense hasn't been at the same level it has been before, like in the 2019 season. Their defense has been very strong. A defense that, I'm not sure, I didn't watch the end of the game, but a defense that played strong for 3 quarters last weekend. But yeah, this is a team that I think has been stronger defensively this year, obviously, but has struggled to find their way offensively, and that's something I didn't think I'd say. Coming into this year for the Ticats, I thought I'd be talking about their defense and offense being at these great levels, but the offense still needs to go out and execute and put touchdowns up on the board, and it's kind of been lacking for the Ticats this season, and that's why they fall to the number 6 spot. The Montreal Alouettes are my number 5 team. A huge comeback in the fourth quarter sent that game against the Ticats last week to OT, and they ended up winning 23-20. That fourth quarter, showed that this team, you can't give that offense any life. Even though Vernon Adams Jr. had turnover trouble again in this game with 2 picks, he was still good enough to find a way in this game. And looking at Montreal's schedule coming up, 2 games against the Ottawa Red Blacks, look for them to put together a potential win streak here. That's going to be my prediction of the day. The BC Lions coming at number 4, even though they got dominated by the Bombers, held Riley under 200 yards. This team, I think their Achilles heel has been them trying to get the run game going this season. They don't run the ball much. I know that because it's a very pass-heavy offense, and why wouldn't it be with Michael Riley as your QB? But at the same time, you need to be able to run the ball. They were unable to do that against Winnipeg this last week, and the defense got dominated by Collaros. Him passing 417 yards on them, 2 TDs, and the ball only hit the ground 5 times for him. So BC, definitely a reality check playing the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but I still believe that BC is a top 4 team right now in this league in terms of the power rankings, just due to the talent that they have, and that huge win, I think, over Montreal puts them at this number 4 spot. And they're on a bye as well this week, so definitely some things to focus on before their big upcoming matchup in Week 11 against the Calgary Stampeders. So that should be a lot of fun to watch. Going into number 3, got the Toronto Argonauts, 4-3. They're a top 5 offense in the league this year, and I think they have an average defense. Look, I've said at times, Arbuckle and the QBs that they have been inconsistent, But when they have been consistent, when they've been on this offense with all the weapons they have, of course, you got John White running the ball. You got a guy like Eric Rogers and some other weapons too. This is a top 5 offense, and playing in the East definitely, I think, gives them a lot of advantage, because I think that is the weaker conference in the CFL still. It has been for a while, but they've been inconsistent in the win column lately still, but they've shown that they can beat teams like Winnipeg, like the Owls and the Ticats. For now, the Argos are here in the spot at 4-3. They have 2 games coming up this weekend, or this week, actually, starting off tonight, where they'll be at home against the Red Blacks and then on the road on Thanksgiving Monday against the Ticats. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But my number 2 team, already gave you guys my number 1. It's the Saskatchewan Roughriders, even though they lost to Calgary. I think that last weekend, I think that Saskatchewan still should be in the spot. Fajardo struggled last weekend, no doubt about it. But this team still has one of the best RBs. They got a solid supporting cast around Fajardo in terms of receivers, weapons that he can throw to. And they also got a guy like William Powell, who is a beast, right? And they got a defense that, can really step up and make some big plays for them. But, at the same time, it falls on Cody Fajardo. Can Cody Fajardo get consistent and get back to that MOP level that he was playing at in 2019? I don't think quite that level, but I could see Cody Fajardo getting back to a pretty decent level. It just goes into consistency. Can he be consistent? And how will he do against the top teams like the Bombers come playoff time? Those are all questions that have yet to be answered. But yeah, right now the Riders, just with their record, second best record in the CFL right now at 5-3. Solid talent on that team, and I think that they're looking to win against Calgary this weekend at home. Of course, losing in a close one against Calgary after a crazy thing happened. Brett Lawler, or Lawler, however you pronounce his name, the kicker for Saskatchewan, ended up recovering his own onside kick. But yeah, we're going to now get into my game picks. This is the longest edition of Graham's Opinion I've ever done. My apologies to everyone who aren't a fan of lengthy segments like this. I will put the timestamps out of where you guys can listen to my segments in today's episode at Watch Parts. If you guys just want to hear the Urban Meyer one, the Kenny Lawler one, my centerman rankings, or the CFL week 9 post week 9 power rankings and week 10 predictions. But just to save some time, I will not give some explanations why I am picking these teams to win this week in the CFL, but the only thing I'm hoping to improve on is my weekly prediction record, which I finished at 1-2 last weekend, albeit the games that I got wrong were very, very close. But starting off with tonight's matchup, the Red Blacks against the Argos, I don't see the Red Blacks winning. I'll give you guys brief explanations, actually, but I don't see the Red Blacks going out and beating the Toronto Argonauts. I think the Toronto Argonauts are too good at every position. And I think that they have an opportunity to, go out and potentially, shock. Yeah, sorry. I'm just looking at something. It's odd. Oh, yeah, so was the Montreal Alouettes I was talking about. Okay, regard what I said. Just thinking back to that team I said would have a nice win streak going potentially. I was thinking, yeah, Montreal, because they're going up against Ottawa, 2 weeks in a row. But back to this, I think the Argos will be too good for the Red Blacks. I think that they see an opportunity to go 5-3 in this game and, try to, stay atop of the Eastern Division standings. I think the Argos win this game. I think the Edmonton Elks and Winnipeg Blue Bombers game in Winnipeg, I think that even without Kenny Lawler, this Winnipeg Blue Bombers team is going to be too good in all phases of the game. They got weapons like Nick Dembski, Darvin Adams, Wolotarski. You got Andrew Harris, who is basically, you can do it all running back is basically what he is. I think Collaros is going to continue playing at a high level, and I think that the Bombers beat the Edmonton Elks in this game. I think that the Riders beat the Stamps in a rematch. I think that it being a close game last weekend, I think that the Riders will have been going to work and looking at the film, looking at things they could have done better in this game. I think, getting pressure on Bo Levi Mitchell hit him a bit. They got some sacks on him last week. If you're able to get constant pressure on him, a lot in this game, could result in some turnovers. We shall see, like on any quarterback. But yeah, I think that Cody Fajardo looking to have a bounce back game. Guy is a competitor, wants to win. I think that it'll be a close one and the Riders win. Red Blacks and Owls, I think, again, the Owls, too good of a team for the Ottawa Red Blacks. But at the same time, Vernon Adams Jr. needs to take care of that football. And, this is a game, the Red Blacks, could be a team potentially that if the Owls come in thinking they can just run the place, it could be a trap game in a way, even though the Owls are under 500 right now. But they are, I think, favored in this game. I think in a way it could be a trap game, but I think that Vernon Adams Jr. will come out riding high off of that OT win they had last week. And last weekend, and I think that Vernon Adams is just going to go out and do his thing. I'm calling no interceptions from Adams in this game. That's another prediction for this week. And then the Argos and Ticats, picking the Ticats in this game. I think that Jeremiah Mazzoli, knowing that maybe he'll be that number one guy for this team, moving in to the latter part of the season, I guess. I don't know who else is going to be starting if, depending on who's in the lineup for them. But I think that whoever is playing at QB, I think that the Ticats having their game not until Monday is huge for them. Just have some extra time to work on some things offensively, get into a rhythm. This has to be the game, I think, that this offense breaks out. We're getting late here in the season. I think that the defense for the Ticats, especially with their home field, even though it didn't work out, that stat last weekend, I think that they'll return to home field and take down the Toronto Argonauts after the Argonauts get a win against the Red Blacks earlier in this week 10 in the CFL. So that's going to do it finally for this edition of Rise and Shine Manitoba. I've been your host, Graeme Forsyth. Special thanks to Adam Wedlake, Lorena Mitchell, Harry Siemens, and unfortunately not Gordie Tumilson, but thank you to Adam, Lorena, and Harry for being a part of this week's edition of Rise and Shine Manitoba. Of course, special thanks to you, the viewer, for tuning in today. This was a long one today. I'll try to cut down on my Graham's opinion time next week for sure, but also a special thanks to our sponsors of today's episode in Fabricland, Winkler, Evolve Green, and AETI. Until next Wednesday, folks, when there's more Rise and Shine Manitoba, I've been your host, Graeme Forsyth, signing off now. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Stay safe out there. Have a wonderful weekend as well, and we'll see you next Wednesday with that. Peace out, folks.